All right, so today I wanted to walk through an exercise that you can use AI for. I'm going to use ChatGPT, but you could use Claude or Gemini or whatever you're using. And I think this is a really cool tool for being able to take a Bible story or Bible verses and turn it into something that is useful for your kids at their age. There's lots of books and stuff that you can buy with, a kid's Bible that's designed for them and that kind of thing. But really being able to kind of customize a mini devotional for them that you want to talk about. So I'm going to put in a few different prompts and kind of walk through, how that could work. All right, so for this example, I'm gonna do 2 to 3 year old. I'm gonna kind of work my way up here, but for a 2 to 3 year old, so giving a summary that's appropriate for them that they would understand, and that providing some takeaways, some questions that I can ask them to like talk through the story that's gonna help them really understand the main point of it. So we get the response here. A long time ago, there was a big, strong man named Goliath. He was part of an army that didn't like God's people. Goliath was so tall and strong that everyone was scared of him. So it kind of goes through the story here. And then we get some questions. Who helped David be brave? I think that's a super, super simple question that, a 2 or 3 year old could kind of have an answer for. Um, have you ever felt small but still tried something big? Being brave. So cool. All of a sudden, we took that story instead of going in and reading straight from the Bible, which honestly might be just a little bit confusing for a 2 or 3 year old, and they might not totally follow along. Um, we kind of summarized the story, they get the gist of it, and we asked some questions to make sure that they kind of really got it. Now we can kind of go up to the next level of like a 4 to 6 year olds, kind of that kindergarten give or take age. Essentially do the same thing. So I can literally just prompt it. So something like that. Um, you could probably just put in, do this for a 4 or 6 year old, and it's probably going to still give you a pretty good, answer. But I always like to give it more detail, just to help give it a better response. Um, so we got a new story, slightly different. Adjusted a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit longer. Goes into some more details that the 2 or 3 year old might kind of go over their head, but um, they might be able to understand. Questions: why do you think David wasn't scared of the big giant? Again, and that's probably a question that for a 2 year old, they might not really understand what you're asking, but a 4 to 6 year old definitely would be able to give you some kind of answer. And I do like it too. It kind of gives them a little bit of focus. This helps them understand the power of faith and courage. Um, Now let's get a little bit older. So we could do something like, all right, so adjusted the script a little bit here for 7 to 10 year olds. Combining real verses, I think, again, even the younger kids, they could probably handle the real verses, but I know sometimes it can be a little bit too wordy for kids. But for 7 to 10 year old, like they should be able to probably start actually reading the Bible verses. So let's do a combination instead of it being all summary. Combine, take some of the verses, some of the summary. I gave the version. You can give it whatever version you want to have it use. And then I said, let's do a third question or takeaway that's a little more advanced to get them thinking about the story in a way that helps them remember it and apply it for themselves. All right, so this is cool. So it's kind of walking through the story, but inserting the actual verses with the reference for them to check out. And so it's good. It goes a little bit longer, and then some questions and takeaways. Great. So age appropriate. Now we'll do one last one. So I went up an age group. This time I said do mostly the real text. We're going to kind of read the passage, but then mix in the commentary. That will help provide clarity for this age group. Give them the questions, and I added in, let's give them 3 suggestions of things to pray about after read the story. So we can go through the story, read it, talk about it, and then something that we can pray about together. So it's still working here. I feel like the mix is not all that different than the previous one, but I think they're probably slightly changing the language. I feel like it definitely seems like it's getting longer and longer because the older kids can handle a little bit more. So we got the questions, kind of the italics shows kind of what you're the point you're trying to hit home with, and then 3 things to pray about after reading, so that way you can kind of turn this into a whole little study session. And this is something that you probably can do with like your kid for 10 minutes, and then again, customize it, add whatever you would want to add to it. I think it's just a cool, quick way to learn the Bible for age appropriate ways. You can add more things. You can do the prayer stuff for the younger kids. I just kind of was adding on to it as I went. So add the prayer stuff in throughout. You can do more questions. Maybe you can extend the story of, do a little, maybe you'd have it be a summary before, a summary after, but then just read the actual text of the story to kind of get an understanding of that. Maybe there's one point that you really want to hit home, or a few verses that are kind of confusing. Maybe in your discussion with your kid, like they bring up a question and you're like, I'm not really sure actually exactly what the answer is or why that is. We can go back to this and just say, hey, let's dive deeper into, this verse. What does that exactly does it mean? And so the whole way AI works is it's pulling from data and from patterns and things that it sees. And so is it always going to be perfect? No, it's going to make some mistakes because it might pull from a source that isn't, perfectly accurate, but again, it recognizes the pattern. So, things that are kind of one-off of someone just said something that's just completely wrong, it's probably not going to pick that up as a pattern that's accurate. So it's going to be pretty good. So try this out. Use different stories, use different verses, whatever it might be, and try it out with your kids and mess around with what you want to do to kind of customize it to make this little, 5, 10, 15-minute, Bible study session with them useful and meaningful for them.